Good morning. Firstly, I think that we should all take the time this morning just to reflect and acknowledge the many people in our community who have been affected by family violence. It is our responsibility to ensure that their experiences are not forgotten. I'd like to thank VicHealth for organising this conference and allowing me the opportunity to speak today. However, I think I've been given the poison chalice by having to follow the Minister and Gerald in what they've said this morning. Look, I find it extremely encouraging to see all areas of our community wanting to address the issue of family violence and violence against women and children in general. Look, I'd just like to take you for a short time on a journey of all places to Greece. Let's think for one moment about their financial challenges, the crisis that they are facing. The whole world is watching, holding its breath to see what will occur. What is actually happening in response to the crisis is that policy is being made. People are becoming engaged with the issues and preventative measures are being put in place. From afar, fixing the system is not enough to end their economic reality. It would appear there is a need for a fundamental mind shift for everyone if it is to succeed. I suggest to you that here in Victoria, this is also our reality for family violence. We are all holding our breath to see what will occur. How will the Royal Commission and Government fix the system? What policy will evolve? How do we maintain people being engaged? And how do we ensure preventative measures will be put in place? But is that enough? Is fixing the system enough to end the violence? I suggest not. Like the Greek community, there is a need for a fundamental mind shift for everyone if we are to succeed. The time is now right for people with imagination, initiative and perspicacity to explore new concepts, who have the courage to introduce change and most of all the patience and humility to work together for the future. Otherwise, one is inexplorably drawn to the question, who cares? I do. Do you? Those words are actually not mine. They were presented at a conference not dissimilar in nature to this by former Assistant Commissioner Reg Baker in November 1982. Reg Baker was the first Victorian policeman to introduce the idea of intervention orders into Victoria over 30 years ago. When I spoke to Reg recently, he told me that he'd pinched the idea of intervention orders from South Australia. Now, whilst it's disappointing to think that South Australia was ahead of us in something, at least it was something of value. I find it incredible that Reg was able to articulate the challenge before all of us today as if he was speaking from 30 days ago, not 30 years ago. Some may find it disheartening that we still have to imagine a world that is different and a world that still needs so much change. However, like Reg Baker, I care. And because I care, I'm actually energised by the challenge before us. I'd like to think that so much has changed for the better for victims of family violence since 1982. Yet here we are in 2015 focused on a Royal Commission into family violence. Surely there is still more imagination, initiative and perspicacity needed from all of us in striving to prevent family violence. For those of you who don't know what perspicacity means, it's simply acute perception. And I'm sure your perspicacity of me was that I had no idea what it meant. And you'd be right. But what a great word. I'm very fortunate to represent and reflect the type of initiative that is required. As leader of Victoria Police's new Family Violence Command, I will continue to have conversations about violence against women with my command members, with frontline members, our stakeholders and most importantly with the community. I want people to hear and understand about the 68,000 incidents of family violence Victoria Police attended in 2014 and know that this equates to one incident every 8 minutes. I want people to know that of those 68,000 incidents, 29 families, sadly, in Victoria last year had to plan a funeral as a direct result of family violence. In excess of 7,000 serious injuries resulted from family violence incidences. There were nearly 400 abduction-related offences in relation to family violence. Around 900 sexual assaults against children in those 68,000. And sadly, of those 68,000 incidents, nearly 44,000 children were present. That's 44,000 children witnessing parents and loved ones fighting, screaming and crying, and having Victoria Police come into their house and their homes and try and help. It's scary to think about the impact that may be having on those children. Unfortunately, none of these numbers in any way reflect the anguish of psychological and financial hardship that is faced by untold families every day, nor do they reflect those who we don't even know about, those who are suffering in silence. I'm concerned that if we put family violence neatly into a paradigm of a number of 68,000, in the media, in our conversations, and in our explanation of the breadth of family violence in Victoria, family violence will actually become normalised as a number. It's important to me to make sure that these statistics are humanised. I don't want to normalise them at all. By speaking about the victims, about the impact on individual lives, we're able to focus our attention on the real stories behind those numbers and able to make them relevant to the community so they can start to take ownership of the issue. As leaders and experts on this topic, you're all well aware of the statistics, and you're probably well aware of our police response. What I want to do in my leadership role is to challenge people's attitudes and to make those conversations part of our normal lives. You see, I would suggest that if any one of you in this room was a victim of an assault or witnessed an assault, my guess is that when you came to work the next day, it would be a topic of conversation, concern and support with your friends and colleagues. Why shouldn't this be the case for victims and witnesses of all forms of family violence? We certainly have a long way to go. Victoria Police is at the forefront of family violence because in most cases we are the first response. We are the first call for help. We are the first option. So we have a pivotal leadership role in the family violence environment, but more importantly we have a critical role in working together to achieve better outcomes. Victoria Police has demonstrated its leadership on this issue in many ways over a long period of time, in terms of Chief Commissioners who are prepared to speak out and create the atmosphere for change, developing and implementing and regularly updating the Code of Practice for the Investigation into Family Violence since 2004, working with government, departments and stakeholders on policy and legislative change, dedicating resources towards our response to family violence and sexual assault, introducing specialist family violence roles, including 32 family violence teams, 17 family violence advisors, and approximately 180 family violence liaison officers who are located at each 24-hour police station across Victoria. However, the question for me will always be, what else can we do to make a difference? Not only in terms of our primary response to victims of family violence, or our enforcement response for perpetrators, or our commitment to the community on this issue, but how can we tangibly demonstrate that we are contributing to the prevention of family violence? Is it sufficient to acknowledge that family violence is underreported? Is it sufficient to acknowledge that people won't engage with the system? And is it sufficient to acknowledge that women don't feel safe if they report a family violence incident? I'm not sure that I can comfortably say that we, Victoria Police, have got our responses exactly right. My question is, can any of us confidently say that we have got it right yet? My assessment in the short time in my new role is that Victoria Police is doing okay. However, there is definitely considerable opportunity to do better, and there are areas that we can improve in. Victoria Police is under pressure. Our capacity to sustain our response to calls to attend family violence incidents is challenging purely because of the levels of the reporting. That means that we have to respond to one family violence incident every 8 minutes. At a minimum, we take at least an hour to be present at or to report on an uncomplicated family violence incident. I'm not sure what an uncomplicated family violence incident is, but that's the reality. 1 hour for each attendance. That's 68,000 hours at a bare minimum of police time every year. 45% of all assaults are family violence related. And police had to personally serve at least 12,000 family violence intervention order applications in 2013-14. The challenge for my command will be to find opportunities to reduce these significant response demands whilst ensuring the safety of victims is maintained. Some of these initiatives will be to improve family violence risk assessment and risk management reports to better identify high risk, redefine our organisational approach to our 32 family violence teams so they are working in a consistent and methodical way, working with courts to improve the response, increasing our educational support for members so they are able to respond to family incidents in a more informed way. We here in this room can probably collectively fix the systems. We can fix the processes, we can develop great policy, and we can introduce positive legislation. But I would contend that until we start to address the deeper gender and community attitudes towards family violence, we may struggle in our ability to enhance our intention of prevention. Prevention is a difficult concept for an enforcement agency to measure, particularly when it is usually based on numbers of charges or arrests. I see the strength regarding prevention for Victoria Police is about leadership on this issue. One of the key preventative areas that I see as an important opportunity for me is to continue the legacy of our former Chief Commissioner Ken Lay and focus on men in our community. Men have a crucial role in helping prevent family violence against women. Yet if we all look around the room, where are the men? And that's why I see that it's important. Focusing on male leadership is not to suggest that men can fix this. It is not to suggest male voices are more authoritative. It's simply to acknowledge that there is an increasing need for men to take action and ownership of the issue. Men's attitudes encourage, legitimise and conceal violence against women. But we can and will have to work towards redefining our culture to make certain attitudes deeply shameful. Attitudes that justify violence against women, attitudes that excuse violence by attributing it to external factors such as stress, drugs or alcohol, attitudes that trivialise the impact of violence, and attitudes that minimise violence by denying its seriousness are all attitudes that we must work to change. There is no excuse for violence. We all make choices and we all have to take responsibility for those choices. We also need to model the behaviour we expect to see in others. We need to challenge the sexist language and jokes that degrade women, identify and oppose sexual harassment and violence in our workplaces, our social lives and in our families. It is important that environments such as this conference are created to enable conversations about violence against women and enable us to take a leadership role on this matter, both publicly and within our own domains. Reg Baker was right 30 years ago, and his sentiments are still valid today. The time is now right for people with imagination and initiative who have the courage to introduce change, and most of all, the patience and humility to work together for the future to address the challenges that family violence presents. Who cares? Well, I do. The question is, do you? Thank you.
Authorised by VicHealth, 15 to 31 Pelham Street, Carlton, Victoria.